Welcome, Gil. It's a pleasure to have you again here, presenting now, if I'm counting right, perhaps the third project built with TEI-Publisher. Gil, you're constantly taking our toolbox into new directions, both in terms of the technology and of the edition types. So we're going to look at a sort of geolocated features today. And well, since we're not so many, I think I'll just keep it short. I've noticed the lovely app that you built together with Sinai Rusinik on Benjamin of Tudela with the travels, but also the nice work that you've done on the play The Dubok, taking us from the Sephardic into the Yiddish area of language use, and their collating variants and working with manuscripts and theater plays, as it were. So it really displays the whole variety of cultural heritage, and I'm looking into learning more about the Hasidic stories today, and take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this very extensive and thoughtful introduction. It really covers our work. And as you said, all of this work has been done together with Sinai, who I think has just had to leave. But yeah, so I'm the digital, she's the humanities pretty much, and we do a lot of work together. So today I'll be presenting the Hasidic Stories Browser, which the main interest here is a non-standard front end for a corpus. So I'll try to show what were the stages and how we got to this point. But first, I just must say thank you all for joining. Today is October the 7th, the day when the current conflict in Israel and Palestine started. And I can't start this presentation without expressing hope that we will move forward and that the suffering in Gaza will end soon, and maybe a reconciliation process will begin. I don't know how optimistic I am about that, but I just couldn't not mention this. So Hasidism, I don't know how much of you are familiar, is a Jewish spiritual and cultural movement that started in the 18th century in Eastern Europe. Stories have a very central part in this movement, both for the ideas that they present and also as a window into daily lives, social networks, etc., in the lives of the people who were telling them. So this project is funded by the Israel Science Foundation, Professor Gadi Sagiv, who couldn't join today, and his team are building an annotated corpus of Hasidic stories from various editions published between the dates you see, 1814 to 1914. And so the project started with OCR, quite a challenging OCR of looking into the old editions. We'll see some samples. And then enriching the information with people, places, actually first breaking it down into stories in the editions, because it is not immediately obvious what the story units are in the editions, and then also tagging inside each story the people, the places, and probably most interestingly, the motifs or themes that are expressed in the story. So this is really all I would say about the project subject matter as a whole, and we'll try to look at what was realized in this project technically. So it started with an annotator. I don't know if you can see, but this is still the version 7 annotator. This was 2 or 3 years ago, probably more like 3 years ago. And the thing to note here is that I modified the template to also show the actual page that is being annotated. If we'll jump into the project, I need to log in. As usual, there's a challenge there. Right. So here we see the live annotator. The stories are divs, and so you can move inside a story through the pages and work on the annotations. As I said, we work on people, on places. There's a lot of people here mostly, but then here's a place, and themes in a span that was added. The themes that are found in this story. As you can see, themes have 2 levels. So folkloristics, story type, birth, whatever, and then it can be something else. There's always a upper level and a lower level in the themes, and we'll see how that is, how we make use of that in the actual view of the project. So now if we go back, that's always a challenge. We go back. Go back here and oh man. And here. So yeah. So we started with pretty regular edition of showing the pages and the OCR text with some of, in ODD, working on places and corrections. If we look at that again, yeah. So here is an example, and just to show the challenge in the OCR with various structures and blocks that needed to be identified. So it was quite a challenging OCR task done in Transkribus, essentially, with some manual work. And then here we see that there's the annotations are showing. Again, there's a person and there's places. The themes are not actually displayed in this version. But the challenge is that we wanted to look at both the stories themselves with their information, and I'll talk about how this is shown, but also at the corpus as a whole. And this is really the gist of this project, where the metaphor of distant and as opposed to close reading, although there's problems with the metaphor, but it is central to what we were trying to achieve here, to both look at the stories and their actual text, but also to look at aggregate information in the hope that more insights will emerge. And as we will see, some actually did. So let's look at the browser. Here we see the different types of information that are available. Actually, we can again jump into the live application. So we see, sometimes happens. So we see that we have the editions, we have the stories in the editions, we have people, themes, and places. We can actually from here jump into an edition and see again a rather standard display, but you might notice that it is actually inside an application. And that is something I'll try to explain in a moment. So we can see the additions, and we can jump into a specific story again with a specially formatted view, which I'll show how it is done. Again, with themes, people, places, you can actually look at the places. They show up in the text. Where is the Baal Shem Tov shown? This is where it is. And the themes that were found in this story. So going back to the application, just to point out that the faceting and the two-level faceting and the option of, for example, setting, we want to filter by reincarnation and also by practice, for example. So now we're seeing stories that have either reincarnation or any of the practice sub-elements. So maybe it doesn't make much sense. We can go and do an and there's no stories that satisfy this. But here we will see the stories that are satisfied, for example, by reincarnation and some other facet. I don't have a live example, but we wanted to be able to have complete freedom on the filtering options. And this goes back to a discussion that we had back in April 2024, where I was trying to see how to do this in, as it were, straight TEI-Publisher, and it came up from Magdalena that actually, after solving some indexing issues with the sample, it is difficult, or it was at least difficult at the time, to select two disparate values in TEI-Publisher. So that really was one of the reasons that I went for this solution, which is technically quite different than standard TEI-Publisher. And we're getting close to discussing how it is different. So the distant reading functionality that was realized is the ability to filter by edition, by person, by theme, and a combination of these filters. You can also do either and or on the filter clauses. You can, I didn't show that, filter by the map, with the map. So if let's do all here and okay, and then if you click on a place, it shows the stories that have this place mentioned. Just as an aside, if you double click on the place, you go to our site, to the Wikidata site mentioning this place. So, again, quite a lot of freedom in connecting different data sources, etc. So going back here, filtering by location, and the filtered collection responds dynamically to changes in the facet in the browser, in the interface, which is quite powerful. And then connectivity, as I said. So let's again slideshow. Sorry, jumping between the different applications and the web browser and different parts. And the close reading functionality that was realized is actually looking at the text itself of the story, either in the full edition or in the single story display, and then getting all of the information that was collected for the specific story. So technical points. on this are that the UI, the client, the web client, was realized in Blazor, which is a C#-based WebAssembly native application. So it is actually closer. It works on the browser directly. It is client only, and unlike Angular and React and some of those where you compile and still run in JavaScript, this runs directly on the WebAssembly of the browser. So actually, it's the performance is very good, and it does also give you or us complete access to all of the very extensive .NET libraries, such as XML handling, JSON, but also powerful filtering and a very rich syntax. So especially for people coming from the C# or .NET world, it's a very attractive way of creating flexible and powerful web-based clients. So that's basically why we're using Blazor here. The custom endpoints, which I list here, were realized directly, and I'll show an example, directly in the custom XQL endpoint that is available on TEI-Publisher. So that was very useful to getting the skeleton there and looking at examples and creating those endpoints, which are then directly available from the ExistDB server that is run, in the regular way. So that's basically the technical points. Please, by the way, it's late in the day to say this, but don't hesitate to stop me if you have any questions on what I'm saying. This is a very small group, so don't, if there's any questions, please just jump in, because I don't actually see the presenter's screen. So an example of a custom endpoint. Get the story info. So just as an example, going across all of the editions and then going across all the stories and creating an XML document with all of the information in each story. So the Anna holds the list of themes, and then the place name and person are added in the in the corresponding tags. So we get a valid XML, which is then wrapped in a JSON and downloaded into the application, and we can jump directly into the C# code. And I think this is where, so, the access to the get story info, which is the direct endpoint, is very straightforward. This is C# code. You get basically a couple of lines of code, and you get the object, the XML, which can then be serialized and accessed into native classes, and you have the whole information in the client. So that's very convenient. If we go back to the browser and try to navigate again to here. So I sort of walked through this quickly, but you can see that this is a TEI-Publisher standard view, right? It actually even has the toolbar, and then the one you can probably see it's one PB view here and another PB view here, with this is quite standard. The way this is done, but it is, as I said, inside a Blazor application, right? So the way that this is done, for example, for an edition, we actually use the HTML5 components that are available from from an endpoint, which is the standard endpoint. So once we declare the endpoint, we can actually build a document or a window very similarly to the way it's built in a standard TEI-Publisher template. But this is a C# application. You have code behind where you can actually access the different components and do operations on them, make them view, make them disappear, make them change color, etc. So it's a really a hybrid between the HTML5 components exposed by TEI-Publisher and the C# interface. The story, for example, has rather simple template here because it has actually components. So the story themes is what is showing. We have story themes, story people, story places, the actual story TEI, and the story map. So only the story TEI has the PB components in it, and again showing the story text, and that then has all the benefit of an ODD to process the text and show the annotations the way we would have in a standard TEI-Publisher application. And then the rest of the components are standard. The story themes, for example, is where I show the standard Blazor tree view for the faceting of the themes, etc. So again, it's a hybrid between the capabilities of C# and Blazor and the capabilities of TEI-Publisher, including, for example, having an ODD and having the capability of looking at a complete XML-based corpus as for the distant reading component or part of the application. I think we're pretty much done. Oh, so to some of the results. But are there any questions about the technical stuff that we have shown? I see something in the chat.
So maybe one question, if I may.
Sure.
So Razor then outputs WebAssembly, and this is then like a static page, or how is it then loaded into the web browser? Do you still need an HTTP server, or how does it work? Is it entirely client side?
It's entirely client side. That's a very good point. It's entirely client side. So it's like an Angular or a React application, completely client side. It can be served from any static page location like GitHub Pages or an Azure static web application, but really Azure is not needed here because it's a static, it's a package that runs completely on the client.
Okay, thank you.
So there's no need for an HTTP server or any other web server in addition to the ExistDB server, which obviously is required.
And we have Boris next up.
Yes, thank you. Very interesting approach. I'll use Visual C# too, so I'm glad that I can see it can be combined. And my question is about conversion from XML to JSON, as I saw on the ExistDB side, and then on the client from JSON to XML back. Again,
Right.
is it necessary, or why you don't use only XML?
Right. This again. There's many ways of doing this, and they're all valid. My thing was that building an XML in this type of syntax where you're looping and adding those tags, the story tag, and then the places and persons tag, seemed quite easy and natural. But then, and I'm not sure this was necessary, but wrapping it in JSON fit into the schema of the way you define a custom API. So I'm not sure how you would go about doing this with sending out XML, sending out JSON where the XML is in one field or member of the JSON was straightforward. So that's why I did it. I'm sure there's many ways of doing it. And then reading it out back into XML is even easier because the serializer, once you define a class that has an XML structure, which this might look complex, but actually it's quite easy to do because C# or Visual Studio actually knows if you give it an XML sample, it will build these custom classes. So so all of this was actually very easy to do, although it might seem involved technically. And obviously, if you would want more direct details, we can do that offline.
Okay,
I hope
thank you.
that answers. I hope that answers the question, though.
Yes, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, so let's just look at some of the results. And I hope I can do this justice because obviously it's not one of the things that I actually, no, I'm sorry, presentation, right. So let's see, where are my, I'm sorry. Again, I apologize for jumping between those different mediums. Okay, so here we can see the results of the way we can look at the corpus as a whole, and we can see, for example, women in the stories and what themes are actually available or present when there are women mentioned in the stories. Naturally, you might be able to guess there aren't that many women, and definitely not as central figures in the stories, in the Hasidic stories from the 18th and 19th century. I don't think in other, I mean, this was probably the norm in many of the cultures at that time. But it was interesting to see that there are definitely themes that go more naturally with women and then those that don't at all. And as you can see, there was one of the themes that was selected was, are there women in the stories? Are they major or a minor character? So it was really possible to combine these different factors and get to some interesting results. Right, so next steps, which are planned for this project. There's actually a continuation grant. Obviously, the big challenge is that a lot of the work was done manually in the annotation, and the team is now looking at doing that with more automation, both with looking matching from a lexicon, but also using AI. I think with the current capabilities of the LLM, of our new LLM based friends, they have been actually quite successful in especially finding themes in the stories automatically or with an LLM, and then doing the man in the or human in the loop trick of actually validating that in the and then adding those to the corpus, to the corpora. So that's really where we're going with the project, and it'll be interesting to see how and if that can be also combined into the TEI-Publisher workspaces. So we're definitely planning to look into that. I also wanted to say that obviously a lot or all of what I've done here in C# can be done with the standard stack, the TEI-Publisher stack. It's really, as I said, a matter of tools one feels comfortable with, and maybe also a best fit for the task. It's obvious that the XML storage and the ODD processing and the annotation workspaces, and actually we're quite excited about upgrading to the version 9 or possibly version 10, and that is definitely planned. So obviously those are where the TEI-Publisher ecosystem's strengths are, and depending on the complexity of the client, I think this is interesting to consider other ways of realizing the what is asked for by the project team in a flexible and powerful environment. So again, that's actually what a few points about this. When the structure is when would I use an alternative frontend to TEI-Publisher? So especially the last point, it's obviously personal. Actually, I was going to say this to Wolfgang. I am involved in an ERC grant application, which we hope will come in next summer. And we are definitely, we are even going to probably ask for your assistance, for your paid assistance in designing a sort of something, an application that is similar to the correspondent applications, Azure and others, but with some specific components. But we still feel that straight up TEI-Publisher stack will be the best solution there. So that's still in the cards for a different project. Again, questions, comments, criticism?
Yeah, so I would just start, if I may. Yes, I find it very, very interesting that you managed to integrate TEI-Publisher components and the API into this C# framework, about which I have never heard before, I must admit, but I'm also not a C# person. Anyway, I mean, this is how TEI-Publisher was designed to be, and I find it quite encouraging to see that it worked for you this well. I mean, also with TEI-Publisher 10, we will have even more modularization in the form of application profiles or functional profiles. So I guess some of the custom endpoints and functionality you showed could also be interesting for being put into one such profile. And in particular, I think if you are looking into using LLMs and so on for entity recognition, so this kind of stuff is definitely something where we would also like to add more reusable components into Publisher. So if you figure out anything that really works for you in that area, yeah, please give me a note. so we could see how those things could be actually integrated. Yeah. But anyway, altogether, very interesting project, and I'm really happy to see that you managed to integrate TEI-Publisher components and functionality into your framework. That's how it should be.
Thank you. It's very interesting, your point about the increased modularity planned for version 10. So that might be even more helpful in that direction. I just want to make a point here that I used the C# Blazor client-only framework, but everything that I've done here is absolutely possible in Angular, in React, in Vue. All of those client-side frameworks, they all allow the integration, obviously, the integration of HTML5 components, and the fact that all the components are exposed as HTML5 is hugely significant here. And so anyone who feels comfortable in Angular, for example, everything that was done here is as straightforward as it was for me in Blazor.
Very encouraging. And next up, I envision the Legoland of web applications to come up as the Dane in the room. But I pass on the word to Thomas Kollatz. Yes.
We can't hear you, Thomas. You're muted? Can't hear you. I'm sure we're missing out, but we can't hear you.
Yeah, he's not muted. But now, Thomas, you're muted. Okay, unmuted, but still nothing. Maybe just type
if you want to type, yeah.
Type your question.
Okay,
Thomas,
so what Thomas is asking is that the question of which attributes is used to tag themes. Is it the @ANA? And on which level is it? On the whole edition or on chunks of text?
That's a very good question. It's first to say it's on the level of the story. The themes are on the level of the story, and at the time with TEI-Publisher 7, you couldn't have a note which was empty. And Wolfgang, you might remember that this is a feature we asked for, and I think was implemented in version 8, that you can actually add a note without surrounding a word in the text. But in 7, we didn't have that, so we are actually adding a span with an attribute of ANA, and then a list of themes. Not very elegant, but because it's then processed in the web client, so we have everything we need, I get the list of those and I break the list, the comma delineated list, and also build the hierarchy. That is all done in the client. So again, the client is quite, feels comfortable to do that type of processing, building a hierarchy, etc. So again, to answer, the annotations are done on the level of the story, and we're using a sort of hack to do it because we couldn't find a better solution, but it's a very workable hack. Anything else?
Is your code actually available somewhere, open source, or?
Sure, I can. It's on GitHub. I can make the client open source. I'll post a link. I'll make the repository public.
Because I just think it might be interesting for
Sure.
other people to have a look.
Sure. especially those parts of the templates where, I mean, the equivalent of a template, which is actually a Blazor component, but really once you get the connection right, it's identical to actually building a template.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds very exciting. And as I think I wrote in the chat, I know some people at UC Berkeley who would be interested in having a look also at the interface and the affordances that are involved, like what it actually enables you to explore at scale, or also the spread of stories. So like the geographical element coupled to the chronology of it. Could be quite interesting. That would be a classic question. Also, like how stories evolve and change, like variants of them. So that could be interesting.
Sure. This project is not very strong on the timeline because the editions are sort of they were published in a sort of stochastic way, and we have various copies of various editions. We don't always know the line of transmission of the stories is not very clear, so we can't actually place them in a timeline. It's difficult to do, but obviously this general approach can be used to build a UI with a timeline, and might be very interesting.
Excellent. So I forgot, of course, to note when we changed from presentation to questions, but that I think owes to the lively character of our meeting today. I'd like to thank you, Gil, and also Sinai Rusinek for joining us with us today. It was a very varied talk, and also on many levels, content and user interface, but also the technical perspective this opens up for developers, especially outside our own space. So thank you again for joining in, and looking forward to seeing how it further evolves and what you come up with next time. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Welcome.
Thanks a lot. It was very interesting. Thank you.